If you're considering buying land instead of a house, Oklahoma makes that look pretty darn attractive. Compared to a lot of other states, there's just a lot more land here. There's more open space, there are more acreage listings, and often there are way fewer visible restrictions. You'll see parcels of land that would be completely unrealistic in places like California and Colorado. And here in Oklahoma, you might be scrolling land and like looking at these prices and stop scrolling and thinking like, is the land really that cheap? For a lot of people, the appeal is all about the space, right? We're talking space from neighbors, space to build exactly what you want, space to add a workshop, a barn, maybe even a pond. And then there's also the mindset shift. People move to Oklahoma expecting fewer rules, fewer HOAs, more relaxed HOAs, and fewer people telling them what they can and cannot do with their own piece of land. And in some areas, that mindset is absolutely correct. Okay, I also hear this a lot from people who want to buy land. Well, I'll buy land now and just build later. And absolutely, this feels more doable. It feels more step by step. It's way easier than thinking about the entire process all at once. And sometimes, yes, buying that land and then waiting and sitting on it, maybe paying it off, is a lot easier than thinking about the whole thing all at once. But here's the thing. Oklahoma has a way of making land feel way more accessible than it actually is. Not because it's a bad idea, but the visibility of the land and the price makes you kind of underestimate the work that could be involved and also the money. Land in Oklahoma is tempting for so many reasons. The key is understanding whether you're drawn to the idea of land or whether you're actually ready to attack what comes with land in terms of taking your resources and finances. Buying land in Oklahoma can actually be a great idea, especially if you're a planner, and especially if buying land really matches how you want to live your life. It tends to work best for people who already have an idea of what they want to build. They're not like flying by the seat of their pants, right? There's no someday goal. Everything's on a clear timeline. Even if that timeline is a year or two out, like a year passes really fast. Planners understand that there are steps that you're gonna have to take. And if you're not good at managing all of those steps, or if you don't want to, which is totally fine, then maybe land isn't for you. Land works really well if you value flexibility more than convenience. If you want control over the layout of the house, over which direction it's going to face, what kind of outbuildings you're going to build, where the road's going to be, like, then you need land. You need to build something. You don't get to make any of those decisions whenever you're buying an existing home. In Oklahoma specifically, land can make sense, especially if you're looking for something that doesn't have a lot of restrictions. In most rural areas, you're not going to be backed into a corner by one style of house or an HOA or something like that. That freedom is a real benefit for people, and one of the reasons people like to move here and build a house. I also see land work really well for people who have a longer timeline and they're good with that. You're okay with waiting. You're okay with everything unfolding in stages. You really can't want instant gratification. Like I said, people who do well with land tend to be planners. These people ask a lot of questions. They're okay with uncertainty to a point. They're okay with uncertainty as long as they understand the process. If your vision is amazing and long-term, like 5, 10, 20 years down the line, and you want to create something, then building might be for you. It's really nice because land, if you develop it the way that you want, can really support the lifestyle that you envision for yourself. But it's really hard to go into it if you're vague on it. So just keep that in mind. So right around this point is where people start pulling out a pen and paper or your notes or whatever and start adding things up. Money-wise. Okay, so you see 10 acres for sale, and it's shockingly low to you, the price on those 10 acres, especially compared to what the price of homes on 10 acres may be. And really, building can be the smarter move, for sure, because of the price. The land is cheaper, and you end up getting what you want. Okay, but then the comparison falls apart a little bit because of a few different things. When you buy land, you are not buying a place to live. You are buying a project. You are buying a second job. A house that's already built includes permits and utilities and a driveway and a septic system and a well, and raw land does not include any of those things, most likely. So the lower purchase price is awesome for the land, but it's just the beginning. It's really important that you understand that things are going to pop up that you did not expect, like things that cost money with the land. Once you begin to see land like this, in this lens, everything's going to make more sense and you won't be so surprised. Once you purchase land, there are a whole list of expenses that come into play before you start building anything that has to do with your house. And we're not just talking about costs in terms of money, we're actually talking about costs in terms of time as well. This is going to take your time, even if you're just making decisions and not doing the actual thing of like putting in the septic system or building a road. Okay, first off, with land, typically your down payment is going to be at least 20%. I see this a lot. I also see people paying for land outright in cash. Both is normal. There's also a survey, and you may not need to do one, but you probably will if it's raw land, and especially if it's being split up from the original landowner or someone that purchased in between. We have a lot of big parcels left, but you have to kind of go outside the city to find stuff like that. If you're planning on using a septic system, which is super common outside of city limits, then you're going to have to do a soil test, or what's called a perk test, and see what kind of septic system you can use, whether it's a full septic tank system or an aerobic system. And then there's access. Your land has to have a driveway of some kind so that you can drive to your house. And it may already have one, but it may be in the wrong spot. This happens. You will also maybe need to work on some drainage stuff for your house. So keep that in mind. And then costs associated with a driveway. I mean, it's like gravel, yes, or if you're going to pave it, wow, that's even more. Or you may have to put in like some sort of culvert for the drainage, or a tin horn or something like that. And all this requires big machinery. So are you going to buy that machinery, or are you going to hire someone to do it? And who? All right, so at this point, we haven't even started yet on the house. Let me cover a few more items on the utilities list. One of those things is water. If you are outside city limits and you don't have access to city water or rural water, then you're going to have to drill a well. With a well, the cost isn't set until you have reached the depth that you need in order to get the water that you need for running your house. So that might be like a question mark until the well gets drilled. We talked about sewer a little bit. You may be able to hook up to city sewer. In some areas, like out in Choctaw, you may be able to do this. And in some areas, in most areas, you're going to have to put in your own septic system. So that's another cost. And then there's electricity. So electricity is, it's the transformer might be close, but you still have to pay to get the transformer, or to get the energy from the transformer to your property. So that's a setup system with a specific electric company. Internet is another one. You may want to do your research on this. We have fiber in a lot of areas in Oklahoma, and some places still run on satellite. So you may want to do your research. Gas is another thing. So a lot of homes here in Oklahoma run on natural gas to some extent, and there may not be a public gas line that you have access to at your land. So then you may have to look at propane tanks. The key here is understanding these costs are not abstract. They do show up early. They have a starting point on the price, and sometimes the price still goes up. And it's one of the reasons that two different pieces of land may have very different costs associated with them, even though the price per acre is the same. Did you know that there's a middle ground here? You can make this a little bit easier on yourself. Not all land is completely raw, meaning there is nothing on it. You'll often see acreage that has been split up by a landowner to kind of form the skeleton of a neighborhood. A lot of times the landowner may be someone who has owned the land for generations, like their family has, and this is a way for them to make some money. What they'll do is they'll plat the piece of land. So they get a permit and they plat it. And usually we see these at like an acre to 5 acres of land. And there may be like differences in the little plats that show up, or the lots when I say plats. And then usually they put in a road, And usually with a neighborhood like this, you're going to have an HOA because the county won't take on that road for maintenance. So the neighbors have to maintain it. I've seen these neighborhoods at 1 acre, 5 acre, 10 acres, like, and some acreages in between, right? What makes sense about this is a lot of things have already been worked out for you. Sometimes they'll have like started the driveway into the land itself, or maybe they already did it. Like, it depends on how much money that landowner is wanting to dump into the properties. Usually you're going to have very good information about the utilities so that you don't have a bunch of question marks about that, either because your neighbor, it's like someone next to you has already built their house, or because the landowner knows, like, already struck a deal with the different utility companies. One of the trade-offs here is going to be the cost. You are going to pay a premium for land like this because it's easier. You are paying for infrastructure and certainty and very few surprises. They may even have a builder or 3 that they want you to work with. For a lot of my buyers, this is a really good option, is to find land like this. You still have space and privacy, and you still get to build what you want, and it's not as difficult as buying just straight raw land. Even after you account for some of the costs, like the upfront costs, like the land itself, the utilities, prepping things, like there's still some costs that may sneak in there that surprise you. One of those is prep and dirt work. Like, you may have to do more dirt work than you originally thought. I see this a lot. It's really important because you want to manage drainage on your property. Like, you don't want water flowing towards your foundation that will destroy your house. There also might be instances where you need temporary water or temporary power. And then of course you may be carrying 2 housing costs at the same time. Like, if you live somewhere and then you also are building something. Permits and inspections might run you more than you think, but sometimes you don't have them at all, depending on where you are in Oklahoma. And here's the thing, none of these costs are outrageous, but whenever you have 10 different surprise costs, they kind of add up on you. All of this does not mean that land is a bad idea. I am not saying that. Land just rewards people that, like, are ready for it going into the project. I wanted to pause here and tell you some real life stuff through my own lens, okay? So me and my husband, whenever we were looking at housing options, like, yes, we could have chose land. We did not. We ended up building a house through a production builder. Land just really wasn't what we wanted. We wanted to live in a neighborhood, and we live in town, so it worked out. I mean, you can live in these kinds of neighborhoods way out in the suburbs, or even in the country. Like, these kinds of neighborhoods exist, but this is what we chose. We like being 10 minutes from downtown Norman. Believe it or not, I have been through the raw land process. My parents did this as I was growing up, and the hours and hours we spent out at the ranch, rechecking, double checking, quadruple checking, all of the contractors' work, like, that was a lot of time. So me and my husband live in town. I like the predictability of it. I have lived on land. It is not what I want to do, but I do understand the allure of it. With our production build, we knew what it was going to cost. We didn't have to carry the construction loan. The company did that themselves, and we got to pick everything, like the plan of the house. We got to pick from like 10 different ones. And then we also got to pick like colors and floors and a few different other things. Like, it was the fun stuff, not the hard stuff. On the flip side, I've had clients that chose to build on raw land, and it was the perfect decision for them, and they love it. And yes, it was a lot of hard work. They had the patience and the financial flexibility, and yes, so many of them end up living in an RV on the property until the house is done. But these people have a very clear end goal, and I cannot stress to you how important that is. One of the reasons that buying a house in Oklahoma can make so much sense is because all the work is already done. When you buy a house, the utilities are connected, the driveway is there, everything is done for you. You just have to move in and live your life. You know what the monthly payment is going to be. Sometimes this kind of stability is what people need, especially if you are moving in from out of state. Buying a house doesn't mean you have to give up on land or space either. There's lots of houses on land. And choosing a house first doesn't mean you don't get to look at and buy land later. For a lot of people, buying a house first is going to create some financial and emotional stability that you need to put you in a great position to buy land and then build a house. Sometimes just buying a house makes the most strategic sense at a certain point. So I'm Marcie Billen. I'm a real estate agent here in Oklahoma. And if you're looking to purchase something, even if you're not really sure what that's going to be yet, give me a call. This is what I do. This is my entire job. I can help you with that. You're going to find my phone number at this part here below, okay? And then you'll also find a QR code. Use either one. That will work. When people ask me whether it's worth it to buy land instead of a house in Oklahoma, typically they're asking me something like, does it make more, like, is it cheaper? But that may not be the right question to ask. The better question is probably, do you want a project? Or do you want a place to live? Neither option is wrong. Just go into it with your eyes wide open. If you are still leaning toward building, I have another video for you. That video walks through what the process could look like. I also have a video that outlines how to buy a house with land. So pick your poison, and I'll see you later.